Well, as we've been reporting, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, is under mounting pressure to make some kind of response to the Supreme Court's decision that the definition of a woman is based on biological sex. Of course, MPs returning to Parliament after the Easter break today, and it'll be PMQs tomorrow.
Trans activists have also vowed to ramp up their demonstrations, with at least a dozen rallies reportedly planned across the country next weekend. This was the scene in London on Saturday. Some trans women are protesting the decision by posting on social media from female toilets. So are female-only spaces now no-go areas for trans women? Discrimination barrister Robin Moira-White, who is a trans woman, believes the decision does not automatically ban transgender women from female-only spaces, while fellow discrimination barrister Beth Grossman believes the decision means female-only spaces are now a no-go area for trans women. Right, it seems to me, then, that the Supreme Court ruling hasn't clarified this at all. Beth?
On the contrary, the Supreme Court ruling is a model of clarity. It makes it abundantly clear that the definition of biological of sex, of the words male and man and woman under the Equality Act relate to biological sex only, that for the purposes of that Act, a man is a biological woman, a female is a woman is a biological female, and if a space is a single-sex space, then it is reserved for biological men or biological female.
OK, so we're using the example of toilets simply to make it absolutely crystal clear. So your position is female toilets are now barred to trans women. So a biologically born male body, but a trans woman would no longer be able to use a woman's toilet.
Yes. Toilets are single-sex spaces. Mm-hmm. A mixed-sex toilet may well exist in certain places, and trans women may go there just as biological males may go there. Mm-hmm. But if a toilet is a single-sex toilet for women only, that space is for biological women.
All right, well, let's come to you, Robin, then. Let's say this Saturday night, you're at your local pub with your friends and you need a pee. Mm. And there isn't a unisex toilet there. Mm-hmm. There's a gents and there's a ladies. Where are you going to go?
I'm going to use the ladies. And to prevent me from doing so would be unlawful discrimination based on gender reassignment, because there is no appropriate space.
What if the manager of the pub, the guy behind the bar, the woman behind the bar, points to you and says, no, I'm sorry, I have reason to think that you're a trans woman and you're not allowed to use the ladies?
Then we're into the litigation which I predict that this Supreme Court ruling is going to bring us.
Do you think that they would have the right to ask you if you were a trans woman or not?
Well, we had the Gender Recognition Act because of a case called Goodwin that went to the European Court of Human Rights back in 2002. We weren't given the Gender Recognition Act because of a benevolent government. We were given it because under the convention we had to provide that possibility. Right. Now, the significant difficulty with the Supreme Court ruling is that it doesn't address that. And maybe it correctly points out some difficulties with the Equality Act, but what the most significant difficulty is that the UK probably finds itself in breach of its convention obligations under the European Convention of Human Rights.
Beth, Robin says still going to use the women's toilet. But if you're in the women's toilet, do you then challenge Robin? I mean, who do you challenge? And what right have you got to do that? I mean, what... And equally, you know, in the men's toilets, you know, this is going to present a problem, isn't it? People are going to start feeling like, I don't know, that they should police toilets, which feels a bit uncomfortable and probably, for someone like Robin, quite hostile.
It's not for the individual user of those toilets to police the toilets. It is for the service provider in whatever setting that is.
So the pub manager?
the pub manager or whoever is responsible for that space. And I think Robin has got something wrong. If Robin was asked not to enter a women's toilets, that wouldn't be discrimination based on gender reassignment. The reason Robin would be asked not to enter that space is not because of Robin's trans status. It is because Robin is biologically male. And the Equality Act contains a number of very clear provisions and exemptions which allow for single-sex spaces to operate.
So is the answer, Robin? I mean, probably a lot of people will think it's therefore to provide an alternative facility.
Well, what I predict is going to happen is that we're going to end up with a lot of gender-neutral spaces.
Yeah.
So what the pub is likely to do, and I'm already giving advice about this difficulty, is to take the signs off the two doors, and you end up with two gender-neutral spaces.
Do you think that's the likely outcome?
Yeah, I think because...
Is that an outcome that you would welcome?
Well, I think it's an outcome that avoids the pub or the pub chain being sued.
Well, if that doesn't happen, can I put an alternative scenario this coming Saturday night to you?
Yeah.
What if a trans woman decides to follow the law and uses the gents and goes in there dressed and looking like a woman, she is, and sees herself as a woman, she's a trans woman, and a man in there on a Saturday night takes offence and says, get out, you're a woman. Where do we go from there?
Well, the short answer is that man is harassing that trans woman in that space, and the service provider, the pub manager, should take issue with that man. It is not for him to be discriminating against any person in that lavatory.
So we're going to get conflict, aren't we?
Yeah, that's what it feels like, Robin.
That's why I predict that we end up with gender-neutral spaces, because then there will be no sign on the door that differentiates, that the users will know that they could encounter anyone. That there are some nuances about workplaces, but let's focus on the service delivery location. And in that circumstance, then, yes, people may be made... The effect of this ruling may be that people may be made to feel more uncomfortable because not everybody is comfortable with gender-neutral spaces. But business won't get sued.
You see, I think there's a different solution to this, and the solution is we preserve single-sex spaces, but we also allow for unisex toilets. These are confined spaces which have sinks within them, which have floor-to-ceiling doors, which open into public areas.
Like an aircraft toilet.
Exactly. And those preserve the dignity and the privacy of everyone concerned. They are not necessarily the only answer, because there will be, in many cases, a need for urinals or for a larger number of facilities.
It's going to be a cost to business, though, isn't it? Robin, just finally, the Prime Minister is going to be challenged on this if he hasn't already prepared a statement at Prime Minister's Questions tomorrow. What would you like him to say?
That there needs to be an honest, open discussion, that this is likely to be... This is an opportunity to have a discussion in our society.
Don't you feel there has been a discussion? This feels like an ongoing discussion.
No, there's been a fight.
Right.
There's a difference between a fight and a discussion.
That's true.
And that we need to find a way, as we do with all other protected characteristics, to meet the needs of particularly religious people and balance those rights against other people and find a way forward.
What you're really saying is it boils down to a compromise. There needs to be a compromise.
There needs to be some acceptance on both sides that trans people don't wish to be shoehorned into opposite-sex facilities, and that some, particularly women, are concerned about people that they would not support being in spaces that they think are private to them.
Yeah.
And the two sides need to get together.
OK, thank you both very much indeed, and we'll wait to see what the Prime Minister says, if he says anything about it.